In our modern age of gaming, waypoints are used to guide a player to a specific objective or a place to go, therefore restricting how much a player really gets to explore. You see this type of thing in Red Dead Redemption, Assassin's Creed, Horizon Zero Dawn, and even Skyrim, to name a few. These are all games that focus on narrative, and what I mean by that is that they present a story in such a fashion that it is always in the face of the player, directing them where to go, what to do, and how to do it. The freedom of being in an open world is somewhat stripped back in modern games. Instead of exploring and learning about the world through organic gameplay features, players are put on a set path to a specific location and to meet a certain person. And you could even argue that gameplay mechanics like fast travel hinder the experience even more, removing all types of exploration for the satisfaction of not having to travel to a specific objective. Now, this is usually used in environments that are too big for their own use, as the majority of the environment would usually be barren or devoid of any actual storytelling or purpose. But one game has removed the necessity for these such features, and that game is Journey. Journey's storytelling isn't told through in-game dialogue. In fact, there is no dialogue at all. You are never told what you're doing or why you're going to go to the mountaintop. If you look at Journey at its face value, the one objective you, the player, has is that you're trying to climb the mountaintop, much like many other people have in real life. Perhaps to get a sense of fulfillment, to complete a personal goal, for the satisfaction, or even to prove their self-worth. There are numerous possibilities as to why you, the player, are climbing to the top of this mountain, but you are never directly told why. The only indication that you get as to what you're supposed to do in Journey is via the title screen, which has you, the player, staring at the mountain in the background, signifying that the mountain has a more significant purpose than just being a mountain. There are no waypoints, no markers, no minimap, no HUD, no compass at the top of your screen. The only hint as to where you're supposed to go is from that title screen. Now, I pose a theory that Journey is more than just climbing a mountain. It's about life and its troubles, and also about accepting death when your time is up. The thematics of this theory are not directly present in the game. That was perhaps due to the developers wanting each player to interpret the game in their own way, to craft their own stories and to take on their own journey. The first level in the game is a barren desert with buildings that are destroyed. There are what looks to be gravestones in the sand, which will eventually be covered up by a mountain of sand and forgotten by time, and therefore proving that nothing is forever. Through time, everything is forgotten, no matter how much we want to be remembered, or how much we want certain events to be remembered. Everything will eventually be forgotten. And this is also represented through the buildings, or lack thereof, in the opening levels of Journey. Buildings that could have housed people and families, neighbours and friends have now been stripped back to the core, only leaving rubble in their wake. Much like how we see historic landmarks today, castles that once housed kings and prisons that once held people are slowly deteriorating, whether that be due to time or a lack of care. Nothing is ever constant. Well, apart from time, that is, and how time passes, no matter who you are. Throughout the first 4 levels, we only see ruins, remnants of what once was. Bridges that once allowed people to travel are now pillars left in the sand. In the last section of level 4, the player is sliding down a river of glistening sand. The sand reflects the sunlight and almost makes the sand look like a precious diamond. It's honestly one of the most beautiful scenes in video gaming history. But through having this cinematic and the scenic journey, whilst sliding down the sand, the player does not expect what awaits them at the end of the slide, and that is the dark underbelly of the world of Journey. In the 5th level of the game, the player is dropped into an underground cave where more broken buildings lie buried under the sand. This section of the game is one of the most interesting in the sense that now you have enemies that can damage the player's health or lessen the scarf and its abilities. These enemies won't attack you if you're near them necessarily, but will only try and damage you when you stand in their bright light. This level almost represents the darkness that resides in everyone, even though some might not like to admit it. Level 5 represents the darkness that everyone tries to keep tucked away, the hostility that no one really wants to show, which is perhaps why the enemies in this level try to lessen the capabilities of the player's scarf, making them feel lesser than what they actually are. The player is guided through this level with little glimpses of light piercing their way through this underground buried city. And by doing this, it really makes this saying come true, that there is always light at the end of the tunnel. When you reach level 6, you are once again greeted by the orange hue of the first 4 levels. There are no more deep blues and ominous greens that surrounded the player in level 5. You find yourself in an enclosed temple with a humongous pillar standing in the centre. Your aim is to climb this tower vertically, and to climb higher you must activate a call which powers up the tower, creating more pathways to reach the top, and therefore completing a personal goal in a sea of many more. Once you have reached the top of the tower, you get a glimpse through the window. You once again see the mountain, but this time you are close. So close. You get the feeling that the journey you have been striving for has almost reached its climax. But through all the player has been through so far on their journey, this journey is about to get a lot harder than what you have previously experienced. Level 7 greets the player with a close view of the mountain that you have been striving to get to from the very start of the game. Journey at this point does away with sand that you have been walking across throughout this entire game. Instead of warm sand, you have ice cold snow. This level is perhaps one of the longest in the game. Since you are going uphill, your movement is slowed down, especially in the earlier sections of this level. Instead of floating your way through this level, you are instead hit with harsh winds that push the player back. That is, unless you hide behind the pillars that can protect the player from the harsh winds in the opening sections of this level. If you try pushing too far ahead in the opening sections of level 7, you may experience some hard times, as if you push too far forward and try and get further across the snow-filled cavern on the mountain, you will experience moving 1 step forward but 2 steps back. Level 7 sees the return of the Guardian enemies that we saw in level 5, but to a lesser degree. Level 7 is all about taking those final steps to reach a personal goal, or the final stretch to the end of your life. As although we don't reach the top of the mountain in the same way, we all get there eventually. When the player is at the climax of reaching to the mountaintop, only a few moments away from reaching it, you, the player, die. You have succumbed to the harsh winds and cold environment, and have frozen to death in the snow. And then, you are greeted by a person in white, and it comes across almost as a greeting from an old friend. The player assumes that this is the end of the journey and this is what the game was all meant to be about. About accepting death as an old friend, as the saying goes. And then suddenly you are gifted the chance to reach that mountaintop, with an endless supply of energy to fly to the top of the mountain. The colour scheme has gone from a sunset orange, a deep sea blue, an ominous green, to now a beautiful clear sky. Once you reach the top of the mountain, you then go into a beam of light, and as the player flies away after going into that beam of light, you then see another character. a character embarking on the same journey that you have just completed. By walking into the light, you have now accepted death, climbing through obstacles and trials to make your way to the very top of the mountain. But you never have to take this journey alone. Sometimes you come across another player climbing and taking the exact same journey, but with you. You will never know that player's name because their gamertag is hidden from you. There is no voice chat, and therefore you have to communicate through sounds and symbols to hint to the player something that you would like to say. And this lack of communication between you and the other player makes you gain respect for them, honouring what they want to do on their journey. And due to this lack of voice chat, there are no barriers between gender, race or religion. In Journey, we are all the same. Just the same people taking the same journey through life. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you did enjoy, then subscribe and turn on that notification button so you don't miss another upload from me. So thank you and goodbye.